Hey everybody! Thank you for downloading this mini movie review. This review is on 2017's Death House. And you don't even have to tell me. I've already heard that this is probably hot garbage. It's a big mess. I haven't heard great things, but I have to check it out. It has quite a cast. And I'm like, you know what, I have to. I have to support all these horror icons. They got all these people there, and I'm sure they're giving it their all, and it's going to be great, hopefully on the acting scene, but it sounds like maybe the plot, or maybe, I don't know. I'm not sure what exactly is wrong with it, but it doesn't sound super promising, so we'll see. Let me tell you a little bit about Death House, okay? Like I said, 2017 American horror film. It's written by Gunnar Hansen, the original Leatherface. Texas Chainsaw, y'all. That's definitely in my top 10. So it's written by Gunnar Hansen, directed by Harrison Smith. It has a huge cast of horror icons, including Kane Hodder, Barbara Crampton, Bill Moseley, Dee Wallace, Tony Todd, and Camille Keaton. According to Wikipedia, Hansen originally wanted to bring all these actors together, and, maybe they had high hopes. This cast also has Adrienne Barbeau, which I'm excited about. It's got Michael Berryman, Sid Haig, Lloyd Kaufman, Felicia Rose, and many others. It was released September 2nd, 2017 at the Central Florida Film Festival, and also in the United States, February 23rd, 2018. It runs approximately 95 minutes. I'm ready to go see this car crash of a movie. So I'm going to go check out 2017's Death House, and I'll be back and let you know what I think. Haha, you guys. I watched Death House. Oh, let's talk about it. Let's get into Death House. It really wasn't that bad. At least it wasn't as trash as I thought it was going to be. I've seen a lot worse. I've sat through a lot worse. I didn't want to turn it off. It wasn't like it was unwatchable. So here we go. I'm going to go through some of it with the plot from Wikipedia because I'm a little lost. But man, you know what the funnest part about this movie is? If you're a horror fan, just going through and picking up all your horror icons out of the movie was probably one of the best parts. Which is probably what they were kind of going for, or at least that's something that's good that they had going for the movie, because there's so many different horror actors and cameos in this that you're just like, oh, there's so-and-so, and oh, there's so-and-so, and oh, that's funny, that's so-and-so. I was a little bummed that Adrienne Barbeau didn't make an actual physical appearance. She's only as the narrator. I didn't really notice it though at first. When the movie ended, I was like, where's she at? And I was like, was she the narrator? And then I went back and looked, and they were like, yeah. And I was like, well, you get what you get. It was very fun for that. It was fun to just pick everyone out. You could tell they probably all had a really good time shooting this. Of course, Barbara Crampton and Dee Wallace brought it. So I was all on it for that, especially Barbara Crampton. Dee Wallace, I was a little bummed out because I was hoping she was building up to something. She plays Dr. Fletcher or something like that. And her hair is fantastic. It's like she's all white and she got caught in a windstorm. It's just pushed back. And I was like, yes, girl, your hair. What I liked about Dee Wallace's character is she's so monotone and just calm. And then when the shit hits the fan, she's still calm. And then towards the end, she was kind of starting to kick it up. And I was like, oh, cool. Maybe she'll do what she does in a lot of movies where she just starts throwing out the F word and takes a gun and is just losing her mind, She ends up dying. You win some, you lose some. So let's go over the plot here a little bit. It was a decent plot. They had a story. It fell apart. It got complicated and it fell apart. And it got kind of silly. But they had a decent story to start with. There's a place called Death House. I was like, they could have picked a little better name, but okay. It's like a prison and research place, and they are trying to fix prisoners. I don't know if it's so they can release them or not, but they put them in all these virtual environments and simulations of their crime, and they're studying their behavior, and they're trying different methods, and they talk about a couple different killers. And it starts out this agent, she's in a simulation. She's taunted by this neo-Nazi criminal who is played by Kane Hodder. He's not my favorite. I don't know why. Something about the way he acts or his face or something. I'm sure he's a lovely man. It just seemed kind of corny. Or he was really forcing it. Because it was really hard to tell in this opening simulation. Because everyone else looked like it could have been maybe World War II, because it was like Agent Boone and then Kane Hodder. She was going to capture Kane Hodder, but then she had to kill this mother and son to keep her cover, and that's like her sin, that she did, and she feels really bad about it. But like everyone else was wearing black. It was all dusty and like old, and then he's got just this red button-up shirt. And I was watching it with Mike, and we were like, is it supposed to be World War II? Like, I don't know. I can't tell. I don't know. And then the fact that it's a simulation, you're like, all right. So anyway, that's why she's there. She's introduced to Dr. Fletcher, who is Dee Wallace, and another agent, Novak. And he's there for his own stuff. And I'll tell you this, for the movie, the gore was good. It definitely made me cringe a couple times. It got a little silly towards the end, but there's a really good amount of blood. There's a great amount of organs, intestine. There's some like knife cutting the throats. That was like, it was a lot. So I will give it that. I was like, okay, well, at least they're stepping it up on that. I mean, at the end, there was these like people that were like inside out, skinned inside out. They were still alive. It was really freaky. So that's some positive stuff besides the actors in it, because I'm sure they all had a great time. Kane Hodder included. No offense to him. I'm sure he's great. So then they take Boone to this cell, and she executes a serial killer who murdered her mother. She watches the death. The killer who killed her mother apparently is Danny Trejo. Didn't know he was going to be in this. I was like, oh, Trejo. So he was in there. He killed her mother in the simulation. Dee Wallace takes Novak and Boone to her colleague, Dr. Karen Redmayne, who is played by Barbara Crampton. And she explains that she's more like a scientist. And there's also a bunch of other women scientists in some scenes, too, that I was like, hey, woman, I'm one of those. She explains that the death house uses drugs and machines and simulations, and they start talking about different, to like fix the inmates. And they start talking about the inmates. There's Leatherlace, which is like a play on Leatherface. It's a female chainsaw killer. And they had her listening to like 200 days of like motivational speaking in the shape of her father. And she was still really angry. So I was like, I don't think it's working. And then there was also like the icicle killer. Then Boone and Novak have like a virtual reality tour of the death house. It has 9 levels. I think it's supposed to be similar to Dante's Inferno. The lowest level has the most dangerous, the 5 evils. Like, they really get into the evils and the God and the Satan, and then like it bounces back on atheism and agnosticism. I think they were trying to be edgy or something, but it seemed kind of weird. Because there's even a part where like Agent Novak goes and meets Sid Haig, just like hanging out on a beach chair or whatever in the woods with these two, like a man and woman that are naked and like tied up, and then he kills them by like stabbing him in their back, and then he just starts like ranting on about his agnosticism for no reason, and then it just cuts out of the simulation. Like I'm like, all right. So then they're like, okay, so these 5 evils, they're in the 9th floor of hell or death house, whatever. They're supposedly immortal. So we're like, okay, fine. So then Boone and Novak take a shower together, which was weird. It was like a small shower. Like, it was a decent conversation, but the problem with this movie is they didn't have the best sound. On certain parts, it was a little hard to hear the volume, like, of the actual voices. Not necessarily the sounds, but the voices. So, like, we ended up having to turn it up, and, like, during the shower scene especially, you could hear a lot of just the shower going over the voices. So, that kind of threw off the movie a little bit, too. It was noticeable. As Boone and Novak are talking, they realize they don't really remember much about their lives, and immediately when they said that, I was like, okay, well, they're part of this experiment, but they just don't know it. Immediately, I was like, they're part of a simulation, because even when they were putting on the VR glasses and stuff to watch the tour, I was like, why would you even trust that they're not going to mess with your head? I'm like, everything they're doing here, and then you're willingly putting stuff on your face. They learn about these people, the victims, so they have to like set up these victims for the simulation, and they use real people. They change like their makeup and their breast size and things or something, and it's just all these people standing there, and they're like half out of it, just like standing there. And they use the homeless people for that. So they pick up all these homeless people and they use them as sacrifices or victims, and they kill them during these murder series. Because instead of just having a simulation of a death, for some reason they have to like actually implement a more death to figure this out. It just seems like a sick game that all these people are really into. And it's a pretty hardcore facility. I mean, there's security guards with guns and things like that. And they just keep these like victims like suspended animation until they're ready to use them or whatever. So then there's a guard outside. It cuts to this guard outside the prison, and he's walking around talking about how long he works. He's worked so many hours, and then there's like a sound, and he goes and checks it out in the dumpster, and this boy, who you don't really know who he is, attacks him, jumps out, and it was crazy because I was like, okay, so maybe there's like child killers too. They didn't really talk about that. It was more like a profile of people who killed children and bathed in blood and things like that. So this kid like jumps out of this dumpster, attacks the guy. He was hardcore. Like, he sticks the knife in the guy's chest, twists it. The thing about this movie, immediately he puts his hand into his stomach and just starts like pulling intestine out. And that's another thing about this movie. It was real quick to be like, look, we can just rip out organs in 2 seconds. I don't know if it's because some of it was supposed to be like paranormal or something, because some of them are supposed to be like necromancers, so I was like, maybe that's why. So this little boy like pulls out all these organs and he sticks this beepy thing, this explosive device, in the guy's stomach, and then he starts taking the organs and just putting them back on top like, oh, they won't notice, just like covering it up. The other guards find him and they bring him in, and the doctor who plays this trying to save this guy, to save the security guard, is Lloyd Kaufman, and he's from Trauma movies. He's like the guy who runs all the Trauma movie things. So he's kind of making jokes, you know, about it, like, oh, this guy hold his guts in, you know, that's the only thing keeping him alive. And then they're like, well, what's this beeping thing, like having like coming up on a radar thing? And then right when he goes to pull it out, it explodes, and that's when everything pushes forward in the movie. A lot of the groups are kind of split up, and it throws off everything in the building, putting it into like an hour-long shutdown system kind of thing where it triggers like a power failure. There's a failsafe where like they can let out some gas to kill everybody. It's all bad. So during this, Boone and Novak are trapped in with Dr. Fletcher. So they're like in their own separate thing in the elevator. Personally, I think I would have maybe stayed there, but they end up leaving and climbing out. So after like this hour, it's supposed to like failsafe to this gas that's supposed to kill everybody. Somehow it doesn't work. Instead, because this facility has this stupid thing about all the cages or whatever opening, everybody gets out. You have all these psychopaths getting out in your building, and I was like, that's not good. This is like probably a $5 million facility. What are we doing? And part of me was also like, okay, I can't really be mad, because with the 5 evils and everything being below and things, they really did kind of remind me of Cabin in the Woods. And I love that movie. If I can forgive Cabin in the Woods for having that button that releases all the creatures into one of the best scenes that I watched like 3 times in a row when I first saw it, where all the creatures come shooting out of the elevators, then I can forgive this movie. So I was like, okay, I'll just move on. So Kane Hodder and all the other inmates get out, right? And they start icing everybody, just slaughtering all the guards and just like beating everybody. That Leatherlace chick is not reformed. I don't even know if they're trying to reform. I guess they're just studying the murders. It really doesn't make any sense. Kane Hodder gets shot. Everyone thinks he's dead, but then he comes back because he's like immortal or something. He's been studying the teaches of these 5 evils, so he's like, I don't know, he's got like some special stuff going on. So he survives, and he gets all the inmates together, and they were going to go down and get freed through the 5 evils. And at the same time, Boone, Novak, and Dr. Fletcher get kind of the same idea. They're like, we can't get out the way up, we got to go down, you know, let's go talk to those evil dudes, and maybe they can help us and free us. Why, I don't know. During this, Dr. Redmayne gets killed, and that's Barbara Crampton's character. And during some of the stuff of going through all the inmates, they come across the 3 Satans. These guys were a hoot. At first, I was like, did they really just call them that? And I'm like, oh no, they're crazy. That's what they call themselves. So it's these 3 guys, including Sean Whalen, who was one of the guy who lived in The People Under the Stairs, that movie. He was the guy with no tongue in the basement. So he's in this movie. So it's the 3 of them are sitting there, and Sean Whalen thinks he's Satan. The guy in the middle thinks he's the son of Satan. And the guy on the left thinks he's like the creator of Satan or something. And they're all just like bickering, and they're all tied up. And Barbara Crampton's messed with them a little bit. So they end up killing her. The middle one ends up taking off. The son of Satan has like a mask that he has to use when he murders or something, so he can't. But the other 2 or whatever take her out. So you got the 3 Satans. Then the one who gets his mask back heads down to the 9th floor, okay? To the 9th level or whatever. So don't forget about him, son of Satan. So Boone, Novak, and Dr. Fletcher are getting out of the elevator trying to get down to the lower level. They try to hide from all the prisoners clinging to the staging room of the homeless victims, and Dr. Fletcher loses her grip and falls. It was kind of... I wish her death would have been a little bit better. It was still... I mean, she slipped and fell off the body. Dee Wallace did, and then, like, landed on her hand, and I don't think she was quite dead, but then she died. I don't know. So she's dead. They all get down to the 5 evils, right? There's the 5 evils. One of them is, like, Michael Berryman. One is Bill Moseley. Like I said, when they were talking to the 3 Satans with the female scientists, there was 4 female scientists behind Barbara Crampton. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then when they all went inside, the 4 scientists were just like talking in the background all excitedly. And I'm like, I think they're probably talking about recipes or maybe not passing the Bechdel test. I don't know what they're talking about, but they're really animated considering they're talking to these 3 psychopaths in the other room. So it was just kind of weird that they threw that in there. It was a little hard to not notice them just standing there. Anyway, I'm a little rambly. This movie's all over the place. So yeah, they're down there with the 5 evils, and right before that, this part is when the movie really fell apart. Up until this part, I was having a good time. It was fine. I didn't quite understand what was happening, but it was fun, and the gore was good. So Boone and Novak, the FBI agents, are trying to beat Kane Hodder and the other guys down to the 9th level. So they're like, well, we're going to have to shoot down this elevator shaft, right, to the very bottom. How are we going to do that? I don't know, my hand. So they wrap up their hands, barely. They wrap up their hands. They're hanging onto the rope and they're like, ready? Okay, just let go, we're going to do this. And they have their guns. They each have just like a handgun or whatever, like a 9mm or something. And they're like, let's do it, as if that's going to do anything. And then they just drop. They drop down this elevator shaft, holding on with one hand while it's just like, psh, like ripping the crap out of their hand. But apparently it's not, because they wrapped it up 2 times. I'm like, there's no way. And then they kick into like this 90s like grunge rock sort of thing that was like boom, da-goom, da-goom, as they're going down. And then the whole time they're shooting just at nothing, as if it's going to do anything. They're going so fast, they're just shooting. And it's kind of cool, but it was also like, oh no. The graphics got kind of blurry, they got kind of glitchy. And then it was literally like they just plunged into the crap of the movie. Like that was when it started to lose me. I was like, oh no. So they get to the bottom and they beat Kane Hodder and them there. Not by too much, by a little bit. By now they show up to the 5 evils. There's been like a sacrifice or something. The son of Satan guy with his mask, he's crucified on this cross type thing. You can hardly tell it's him without, it's just got the mask there and then like just pieces of him. And Boone and Novak realize that their memories are false, like I thought. They were former prisoners and subjects of Death House's experiments. So they're told that the evils need to be released so that the agents can pursue them in order to maintain the balance of good and evil in the world. And then there was like some enchanted intestine that danced around and showed them like a message. And then Kane Hodder was like, I love you guys, I've been studying you. And they're like, you know nothing, Jon Snow. And he was like, what? And got tears in his eyes because he was wanting to be immortal like them, and he got all sad. And then they were like, no, you're only a pawn in our escape plan. And he's like, oh, tears. And so then the gas finally releases throughout the Death House. I mean, now that I think about it, maybe this all happened in an hour and they were trying to get out before the gas went off, I'm guessing. Because I don't see why the doors would open, though. Why would you open the doors? That doesn't make any sense. I mean, that could be it. Maybe they were trying to get out in an hour. Either way. So, the gas releases, all the inmates collapse. Kane Hodder disintegrates in this really weird, glitchy-looking thing that looked real bad. The 2 agents get out. You know, everything comes back online. They escape. They're like, oh, what are we? I don't know. Oh, we'll find out. So they're going to go find out their true identities, and that's the end of the movie. But that's not all of the movie. There's another part that had nothing to do. I don't know if this was just people being evil, like in order to propose that people are violent. Because Tony Todd has this thing in the beginning and the end that doesn't make any sense. And at first I was like, well, maybe he's capturing homeless victims, but they're in the middle of this desert. So, and it's always women so far. And there's something about going to a farm. And I'm like, well, maybe he's just crazy, but it goes nowhere. It like starts out with him capturing some woman, and then he's like a necromancer thing. He can like dig into her stomach, but then she's okay. And he's just being all creepy, and then he like throws her in a van, and then at the end he's doing like the same thing with another woman, and then it ends. And I'm like, well, what does that have to do with anything? I guess just to show evil. Maybe I'm missing something. They don't even talk about it here on the Wikipedia article, so I don't know. Sorry I got all flustered there and just rambling on with this movie. It was not good. It wasn't a hot mess, or it wasn't like terrible, but it just really fell apart at the end there. But it was really fun to see all the actors. I will give you that. It was really fun for that. The gore was good. So I'm going to rate it elevators. Let's go elevators. Why not? No. So I'm going to rate it in Satans. We had those 3 Satans. Let's go with that. So out of 10 Satans, I will give this movie 4. 4 out of 10. Mostly for the gore and just the actors. And I'm sure they had a good time doing it. The plot fell apart. The graphics towards the end fell apart. The acting's not great. The sound doesn't sound that great. I mean, it had a 3 on IMDb, but I want to give it a little more than that. So 4 out of 10 Satans is what I give 2017's Death House. Thank you for listening to this mini movie review.